All right, welcome guys to Problem Solver Politics. We are live in the KHTS studio, and I am your host, Cardon Ellis, and we have got a crazy killer show today. So much in this week has happened, but first, for all of you local Santa Clarita fans and friends out there, Bob Keller is a savage. I mean, man, this was a savage week, and we are going to cover all of it. I don't know any of you guys that tune in or head on, mosey on down, shall we say, to City Hall to watch the goings-on there of the not-weekly, but it's the bi-weekly, there we are, twice a month, bi-weekly City Hall meetings. But this is about as rough and tumble and rock'em sock'em as Santa Clarita local politics can get in terms of heated debate. I confess I heard this secondhand and actually had to go back and watch the footage myself. But wasn't quite the Ugandan parliamentary brawl that we were exactly hoping for, but it was pretty awesome. And I, your audacious host, Cardon Ellis, am going to give you all of the details and the insight I can with today's co-host, none other than the awesome Killer Cody Como. What's up, Cody?
Howdy, how y'all doing?
Yes, we've got Santa Clarita's best conspiracy theorist and board op in the land who's going to help me out with this show here. So first and foremost, Cody, you're a millennial man. What did you think of this week's city council meeting? Was this not, I'm going to say something totally early 2000s. This is probably when you were in diapers, but the bomb.com. All right, it was pretty awesome.
Although Guy Fieri's still relevant, I'm still a big Triple D fan.
Okay.
Big bomb.com. It definitely was probably one of the few city council meetings I'm a little bit upset I missed out on. I would like to have been there in person for that one.
Okay, so we're gonna go over what happened. So how would you describe? I'm gonna use this quote a little bit later on in the show, but I love how Albert Einstein once upon a time said, "If you cannot explain something to a 6-year-old, then you do not understand it yourself." How would we explain the drama of the mayoral rotation that just went down in city council? How would you explain it to a 6-year-old?
From what I saw, while going back reviewing the video, basically it seemed like some level there was some miscommunication, and it seems like some people had a plan that they thought was ready. They thought they were going to be able to have the votes they needed, and then when it came time for those votes to be there, they weren't there. I guess that'd be the simplest way I'd be able to lay it out.
Okay, exactly. So in a nutshell, for those of you that aren't familiar with Santa Clarita politics, we live in a nation that's a democratically elected representative republic, and we set up municipalities in accordance with federalism, which means our United States, individual states, are like their own miniature little nation states that have their own constitutions. And the California Constitution requires that we be divided into counties, and those counties then will administrate individual cities. And our city was incorporated way back in, I believe it was 1985 or 1989, somewhere there in the late 80s. Buck McKeon was our first mayor. And as part of our city charter, we have a 5-member city council, with one of them being mayor, the second one being mayor pro tem. However, unlike other cities such as Los Angeles, right across the freeway from us, we do not have a directly elected mayor, meaning you do not run for mayor. What you run for is for city council. And then the city council elects from amongst those 5 seats. So you run for one of those 5 seats, and then amongst those 5 seats, the city council then chooses who the mayor is going to be. However, the mayor really, I don't want to say it's a neutered position. Neuter isn't quite the correct word, but let me tell you, it's I don't think it's everything that traditionally the term mayor is whipped up to be, in the sense of you carry no additional weight when voting on matters in city council. You are one vote, just the same as any regular congressman. You do get additional prestige, of course, and it's always kind of cool just to be able to say, hey, I'm the mayor. You know, in England, people, when they're saying hello to each other and they want to offer respect, they say, hello, governor. You know, so I think maybe we should bring it back here in Santa Clarita, just say, hey, mayor. And if they're not that cool, just say, hey, Mayor Pro Tem. You know, but anyway, so we have a city council of 5, and they elect a mayor. Now, usually, this is just watching sausage being manufactured by a machine. Okay, it's boring. We all know who's going to be up next. It generally rotates. And there's a little bit of security in that, in the sense that it doesn't cause a lot of drama or power plays. However, all that went out the window this week, and Bob Keller became my hero of the week with the most savage, I'm going to say it again, absolutely savage performance in the city council rotation. Do we have a sound clip of this? Of what he said sitting next to Marsha McLean?
Not quite yet. Give me a
Not
minute.
quite. Okay, we're gonna get that pulled up. But basically, in a nutshell, if you were to follow the traditional way of thought, without anybody deviating from orthodoxy, Marsha McLean was up next. It's just the way it is, per se, okay? In what's called the mayoral rotation. And in a city council meeting once per year, all the city council members get together and they specifically accomplish the mayoral rotation, and then they administer each other's the oath of office. So the new mayor has to take the new mayoral oath of office. So preceding all of those oaths, they actually have to hold the election. It's usually something that happens very quickly, within 5 minutes, but everything just blew up when Bob Keller opens the evening. Do we have it, or should I just say what he said?
You can spoil it.
I'll spoil it? Okay. Gets up, doesn't even get up. He just sits there. I don't even think the guy flinched from the papers he was fiddling with. But he says, "No offense to the mayor pro tem, but Cameron's a man for the job. I nominate Cameron." Right? Which totally throws a monkey wrench into things, because this is where it starts getting weird, and some inside scoops that I've heard from all kinds of Republicans around town kind of starts making sense. And this is where the drama comes in. We're going to unpack this for you in the next 2 minutes before we move on to our other interesting topics of the day. But basically, Bob Keller nominates Cameron Smythe. Puts Cameron Smythe in an interesting situation. I didn't think he anticipated it. But now all of a sudden, you're nominated. You're a nominee. Well, that neuters your vote, because you got to vote for yourself. If you don't support yourself, then that's absolute insanity. It shows that you never believed in yourself originally as a candidate for city council in the first place. You have to vote for yourself if nominated. Well, technically you don't have to. Nobody's got a gun to your head, but I mean, it's what is required by logic, shall we say? Okay, so Bob Keller nominates Cameron. Cameron, I'm sure, is pleasantly surprised and is like, okay, awesome. Well, somebody's got to second a motion, right? So who seconds the motion? It was Lorraine. Right? So she's like, okay, I second this. And that stuns Marsha McLean. Now, Marsha was nice when she came on the show. She's always been kind to me. I have no beef with her. But I really do think we need like an image coach to walk her through some of her word choices sometimes from the microphone in city council meetings. Because several times she used the term succession. Like, isn't it my term? Isn't it my succession? And I just think using terms generally given to feudal monarchs of the 16th and 17th century isn't a way of not looking entitled, you know? So anyway, she expresses some concern and says, now, hold on a second. Can we nominate ourselves? Because I was supposed to be next. And I get that. I get her saying, well, tradition requires this. And so she nominates herself, who Bill then steps up. Bill Miranda says, okay, I second that motion. So now you've got, of a 5-member city council, you've got 2 going for Cameron, and then you got 2 going for Marsha, which puts who in the swing vote position that I'm sure did not want to be there? Lorraine West. Okay? And this is where it gets weird. Because Lorraine seconds a motion to vote for Cameron, which would imply that she's down with Cameron. After all, why second the motion and be so vocal about it and step forward for it so quickly if he wasn't your guy? Well, this is where I think she made a mistake, but I don't know what else I would have done in the scenario. But she obviously is looking around and thinking, "Oh no. Somebody is going to hate me. Like, no matter what I do." If she votes for Marsha, okay, now all of a sudden Cameron's going to be saying, what the heck? You you second the motion just to go against me. And then if she votes for Cameron, well, all of a sudden Marcia, who she's served with for 20 plus years, is going to be absolutely hating her guts. And so she tries to give this little speech of, oh, you kids, play nice. But by that time, the genie's out of the bottle, all right? There is nothing you can do to put that genie back in the bottle. Pandora's box has been opened. And it's been opened by the gutsiest dude on city council. Bob Keller had the guts to say no to SB 54. Okay, say no to sanctuary cities. And I call it absolutely savage just because you need to watch the video of this. He's sitting right next to the woman he is about to say, sorry, don't think you're the woman for the job. And he just says, no offense, but you're not the person for the job. Later on when she complains, and I think it was just a party foul on her behalf to say that she tried to intimate that the men on the council were constantly trying to malign our city councilwoman, Marsha McLean, because she's a woman. And I think that analysis fell on very deaf ears, because that's the same reasoning of, oh, you don't like Hillary Clinton because she's a woman, so on and so forth. No, there's plenty of policy-driven means or reasons to think somebody is not fit or qualified for a position. And so she made that weak accusation, which I think was a little bit of a mayoral rotation party foul. But anyway, he said it to her face, sitting right next to her. And I give him credit for the guts that took. I mean, I don't know about you, Cody, but it's a lot easier behind a microphone in the security of a podcasting or a radio studio, or behind people are so absolutely, like I said, savage, vicious, brutal, barbaric on social media and on the comments, where even if you're not shrouded by anonymity, I think you're able to get a little bit more, not liquid courage, but digital courage when there's a screen in between you two, all right? However, when you're sitting next to the person, that takes total guts, man.
Well, also, he's not going to be sitting next to her just that night. I mean, they have meetings going forward for a while here, so that's going to be really interesting to see how that, plays out now.
And the reason why I say it got, I think he reached the savage level of just plain old gutsy, but savage, is she, after doing the party foul commentation of, oh, well, it's because I'm a woman, she tried to pull that stunt. He comes out. Well, she also acts surprised. Now, I get the surprise. I mean, really, we want our city council to be dignified. We don't want to see this kind of drama. We want to really think these people are doing a very difficult but boring job for us, so we don't have to. We want to trust that our city council is functioning well. And you'd think that they'd be handling this stuff beforehand, right? So she tries to say, well, you at least should have told me if you weren't going to support me. And then he turns right around and just presses the mic button and just says, actually, I left you a voicemail at 1 p.m. earlier today. I mean, it was so harsh, but so just, I mean, it was fun to watch. And
it's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be an interesting year moving forward, or a couple of years, I guess, moving forward with
and I have to say,
council.
The battle lines have been drawn. I mean, she came out afterwards. We're going to get some of these sound bites thrown up here because we're going to skip through it, but we have got to throw these up sometime later. But she then started to accuse him of, you've hated me the whole time. You've always tried to undermine me, right here in the open, in front of all of the constituency. And to a certain extent, I actually think this is good and healthy in a certain way. I like that this week Donald Trump fought with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in that Oval Office fight. Not fought, but, had their heated debate, because I think sometimes it's just a value for the American people to see how people really think. Us millennials, we very much value authenticity. We do not slight people for having passionate views of things. So when generations that generally don't subscribe to those same ideals come out and represent them, we definitely appreciate it. So I don't know. savage authenticity points to Bob Keller. So anyway, Laureen tries to do the ecumenical thing and, just say, okay, yeah, well, I'll defer to tradition. But what a slap in the face to a certain extent now to Cameron. So she chooses to go the Marsha route and then leaves Cameron high and dry. So Cameron now is on the record as having voted basically what some would perceive as against Marsha with Bob.
It'd be kind of hard to perceive it, I would say, very many different ways from that, really.
Yeah, and now he's having these attacks lobbed on his social media, all these accusations of not exploitation, what is it, sexism, when in reality, all he was doing was saying, oh, hey, thanks. Oh, you think I'd be good as a mayor? Oh, I'm flattered. I mean, talk about no good deed going unpunished. You know what I'm saying?
You do still have to wonder. I find it, there had to have been some discussion somewhere between some of these parties before the meeting happened itself.
No,
so what changed or what they agreed on and what happened, that's kind of our, we're still waiting to find out.
And also, I got to say, I have been hearing undertones from 10 different people of various city council members having conversations with other city council members about skipping Marsha. You know what I'm saying? That she was not popular in the circuit anyway. Popular with the constituency that votes for her. Obviously, she's popular enough to consistently be winning the vote. But that there was an undertone amongst that body that didn't want her to be mayor. Now, this could just be hearsay. Okay. People always saying, well, I hear they don't want this, that. But I've talked to a solid 5 or 6 people here that have heard that suggestion floated around in the circles that have to do with politics. Okay. So, you'd think it'd be handled ahead of time. You're correct. But I got to tell you, it is obvious now that I wouldn't say the working relationship because they're all professionals, but the friending on Facebook may not be so intense going forward. So Bob Keller gets the Absolute Savage Award of the week, and I gotta say, I think Cameron and his reprisal, shall we say, not his retribution, but his dressing down of the man that sat next to him, Bill Miranda, and the rest of the council was just a thing of beauty. And I give Cameron credit, actually. I could see how a man could be very frustrated being put in that scenario, but I think he handled it with all kinds of dignity and grace. And now pretty much every person on the city council has expressed some kind of frustration in a very heated way with another member. I'm excited.
It should be fun. It should be a lot of fun. Again, I just like I said, you have to wonder how much of everything that happened that night was deliberate and how much of it just kind of came upon. How much of it was planned ahead of time, how much of it was like, well, we'll bring it to vote and we'll see what I say. But I'm interested in what exactly the surprises were for the council members that night. Because for us, we were surprised to see all of it. But I wonder who the people on the council what surprised them that night and what they were prepared for.
Oh, I know, and another reason why it was so, I've said savage way too many times, but just so impressive too, was poor Marcia invited all of her friends to celebrate with her. I mean, it's like poor young Kim who went to freshman congressman orientation only to be told that ballot harvesting made it so she was actually the loser and has to come back and her opponent needs to be the freshman congressman and go through orientation. Poor Marcia is called in about 20 or 30 of her friends to come take a picture with her, and now she's fighting in a position where she has to nominate herself. I mean, that is just...
Well, also, Bill Miranda now apparently is taking another step back in line because I believe Cameron is mayor pro tem now, which was going to go to Bill Miranda. So there definitely was some losers in that night.
Oh, yeah, rough. So anyway, we got a great show coming up. That took a whole lot longer than I anticipated, but we're going to talk about how California now officially is not going to be taxing our text messages. We're going to talk a little bit about that. They are, however, gearing up to go after Prop 13 tax increases. We got an email from a Finnish guy Apparently our transmissions are making it all the way to Finland, and we got some really cool stuff coming about how Congress has to pay its own sexual harassment claims now, and we got some really cool insider scoops here. We're going to get Tim Lindeberger on the line here. He was an insider for the Trump campaign that helped flip Michigan, to unpack a lot of this drama with what is the reality of what Trump calls the witch hunt, what the rest of us call the Mueller investigation. We'll be back in a minute. This is Problem Solver Politics.
You choose your dry cleaner for convenience. Maybe it's time to choose a dry cleaner that is not only convenient, but does quality work at a reasonable price. Town Cleaners. They're in the center of our valley, and they offer free pickup and delivery anywhere in Santa Clarita. Town Cleaners, a dry cleaner who goes the extra step. Their stringent quality control ensures the highest quality cleaning and pressing for your garments. And now through February, save 50% on all dry cleaning orders. Town Cleaners on Soledad and Rainbow Glen.
Mission Valley Bank puts the community in community banking. They strive to be your most trusted bank. Mission Valley Bank is happy to sponsor KHTS Holiday Music. Happy holidays!
Hey, it's Aaron Delatorre checking in with today's weather forecast. Mix of sun and clouds all day long with daytime temps hovering in the mid-70s. We'll see overnight lows tonight drop down to the mid-40s. For anything and everything going on around the Santa Clarita Valley, go to hometownstation.com. Check us out across all of our social media feeds at KHTS Radio, and sign up for our daily newsletter going out each weekday and a special weekend edition on Sunday. You can find that on hometownstation.com.
98.1 FM and AM 1220.
The anticipation of having a baby brings much excitement and hundreds of decisions. When choosing where to have your baby, choose the best. Providence St. Joseph Medical Center. The new Women's Pavilion combines expertly trained medical staff with luxurious labor and delivery suites and the area's most advanced neonatal intensive care unit. You and your new baby will get the best start possible. For more information and a tour, call 1-888-HEALING. The road to healing leads to Providence.
Finding the right lawyer can be a challenge, but in Santa Clarita, there's no need to search when there's Hacker Law Group, Santa Clarita's premier litigation firm. Jeffrey Hacker has represented celebrities, financial institutions, accident victims, real estate developers, realtors, contractors, businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other individuals and companies with their legal challenges. Mr. Hacker is one of Santa Clarita's leaders, consistently listed as one of our most influential. When everything is on the line and you need legal counseling, visit hackerlawgroup.com.
Now FM 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Your hometown station.
All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. We are live in the KHTS studio. I am your host, Cardon Ellis, and we got my board op with me, Killer Cody Como.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Okay, so we just finished talking a little bit about some of the more hilarious goings-on at the city council meeting. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how California just announced literally today that they're going to abandon this attempt, shall we say, at taxing our text messages. Now, here's a couple of details that haven't been talked about a lot in many of the news outlets and the mainstream media productions on this issue that I think are worthy of note. And a lot of the Democrats that listen to our show, I really hope that you can reach out to your elected officials and the people that you support to change what I perceive as a culture within my colleagues on the left in California of entitlement to money that I view as really being potentially extremely destructive for our state. In a nutshell, California has specific tax rules about taxing what are telecommunications. But in what results, but when it ends up being pretty much a parliamentary trick, they declassified text messaging, which has always been perceived as a telecommunication, to an information communication. And that small little change, that little delineation, all of a sudden opened it up to taxation. And this being California, of course, they jump on it. It was wildly unpopular, okay, because obviously it falls in line, to me, with an argument that dates back to net neutrality. and our ability to communicate. I mean, the ability to tax is the ability to destroy, okay? And the internet worked just fine before the government tried to step in. I mean, one of the few things I agreed with Kamala Harris on was net neutrality, and that the internet worked just fine before the government stepped in. I mean, just like Ronald Reagan says, nothing you should fear more than the government saying we are here to help, okay? Nothing you should fear more than that than we are here to regulate. But basically, you can't say as a party, California, that you support net neutrality, but you will go after taxing text messaging. Libertarians agree with this. We have Brittany Kirk and many of the libertarians on board on the show many months ago, and I'm sure they would agree with me. And this demonstrates the two big vices of the two parties in California that need to be addressed. I hope Republicans will address and solve the problem of passing control measures under the guise of national security. And Democrats have this drug of using terms safety and underprivileged to pass all of their control measures. And the big justification of taxing the text messaging was they said, oh, well, this is going to go towards all the programs for the underprivileged. Well, they never have to define the underprivileged. And by the way, to them, underprivileged means people that are going to look like Democratic voters very soon. I mean, regardless of race, creed, skin color, religion, anything. If you look like you're going to be a Democrat voter anytime soon, we're going to find some kind of freebie for you. By the way, that freebie is going to be heavily bureaucratic and will also be extremely lucrative for the corporations that we are going to use our crony capitalism in to get these, quote, free services to these also, in air quotes, underprivileged constituents. So the Patriot Act had many disastrous effects. I mean, the Patriot Act ruined fun. Republicans in the Patriot Act, okay, ruined fun in Santa Clarita, Los Angeles, and Southern California as a whole. I mean, all these rules of the things we used to be able to do that we can't do anymore always had, 9/11, and that was just the excuse, okay? And on the same token, Democrats have been literally taxing us to death under the guise of safety for the underprivileged. So anyway, without sounding like an old man ranting, saying, get off my lawn, we're going to move on to much more interesting things that actually have to do with something important. And all of us, we have the rare privilege right now of having on the line Tim Lindeberg. I'm botching his name, so I'm just going to let him say it when he comes on the air. But we've got Tim on the line, and I'm going to introduce him as Tim was the campaign manager for a candidate you guys might remember from a couple election cycles back called tax fighter Troy Castagna, who's a Santa Clarita resident, who was up against Steve Knight when Steve Knight was doing his first run against Tony Strickland. And he has moved on to run some pretty hefty campaigns and was on the campaign in Michigan to flip Michigan in favor of Trump. And I remember my correspondences with Tim during the election season. It was wild. I'd read news reports, and then I'd text him and I'd say, hey, so is it really this way? And he'd be like, no, dude, what you're reading in the news is absolute garbage. We're going to take this. We're going to do this. And while every other pundit on earth in my phone was saying never going to happen, Tim Lindeberger was telling me we're going to take this thing, and he was right. So, Tim, welcome to the show, my man. How are you?
Cardon, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to hear your voice, and I appreciate the introduction. It was such a blast working on Troy's campaign with you and everybody else and getting to know the district a little bit. And it really taught me a lot about politics and kind of the outsider message. So in terms of helping me with my career, it was just a tremendous experience, and it's great to hear from you, and congratulations on the show.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks. So I follow you, obviously, on Twitter, and I was noticing an interesting little conversation we were having about the Mueller probe. Now, we want to dedicate a whole little section to the Mueller probe, but honestly, I decided I don't want to dedicate a section to it because I'm tired of hearing about it. I was tired of hearing about the email scandals with Clinton. I don't think the first Clinton scandal needed to take, 14 months to investigate. I'm getting tired of these special counsels and people just getting rich off these endless investigations that the opposition party milks just for bad press, and then the special counsels milk so they can sign the book deal. You know, I mean, Kenneth Starr had a huge book deal after the whole thing was done, right? So I want to know, I love how I love how Albert Einstein once said, if you can't explain something complex to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. So if you were to describe to our listeners what the Mueller probe is and why you think it's a big fat nothing burger, how would you explain the Mueller probe to a 6-year-old? And then what's your insight this week on the inside from all your contacts you've been talking to about what you think's actually going on with it and if anything will come of it?
Sure. Well, Cardon, it's interesting that you frame the question that way because working in politics, oftentimes it's like explaining things to 6-year-olds, even if it's your kid. So I'm actually kind of used to that. But I think it's very clear what's going on with the Mueller probe. In general terms, folks really didn't want Trump to win. They really didn't think he was going to win, and they're very upset that he has won and is carrying out his agenda. So essentially you have now what it's come to is where they're digging through all aspects of his life and anything else that they can do to find the crime. And normally the way law enforcement works is you would find the crime and then search for the person that did it. There would be an actual crime that's committed. In this situation, because people are so upset, maybe half the country, maybe a little less or somewhere around there with the president because, he's a polarizing guy, you have a situation where it's become fair game to go after anything in, hopes of finding the crime, right? You're searching the person for whatever they can get. And that's essentially the situation you're at with Trump. It's not how you're supposed to use the judicial system. It's very frustrating as a soon-to-be attorney to watch and to see some of my more liberal friends who are attorneys as well advocate for this kind of behavior. It's very, very malicious prosecution, I think, to sum it up. They're very upset that he won, and people are very okay with using whatever means, interpreting whatever law, setting whatever new standard that was never set before or never used before in order to do it this way because they're unhappy with the situation. And what I want to keep reminding people is I think that they're setting standards that they're not going to want to live with in the future, just for the sheer goal of getting Trump because it's Trump.
Okay.
And I just don't healthy, and I think people need to be more intellectually honest, like you were when you said you're kind of tired of all the investigation.
Yeah, and I liked how you said setting up precedences. Now, to get something clear, you don't really have a horse in the race. I mean, you're not employed by any,
I am no longer employed by the Trump administration. I work for Venture Strategic, the same firm I was working with in the past when we helped with Troy's race. So no, I no longer have a horse in the race. But for full purposes of full disclosure, I am calling live from Trump Hotel.
Yeah, so you are in a Trump hotel. That's hilarious. Well, I see. This was a huge worry that I had. And my fear is precedent. Back when Barack Obama was president, there were a couple of things that he did that I liked. I liked that he was the first president that showed up on late night TV. He had a great personality, and he was able to milk it. And I really think that giving the public access to your persona, if the White House is the people's house, well, then guess what? The president is the people's person. And the more you put him out in front of the people, I think a better president you are. I liked that. We benefit here at 98.1 FM. We're no longer just AM 1220, but we're also 98.1 FM because he passed a law in conjunction with the FCC about allowing AM stations that broadcast on the AM band, which is notoriously horrible at night for nighttime broadcasts, to purchase increments of the FM band and simulcast, which is something we've been trying to get done for 40 years, and he was able to get that done. So there were a couple of things that were good, but there were some things that were really bad that were popular on the left side. They were going through executive order, and I said, now, hold on a second. Like, you may like that this law passed, and to a certain extent, maybe I do, but the how matters almost as much as the what. Richard Nixon was notorious for having said incorrectly that the ends justify the means, and setting up a precedent where you go after somebody because you politically don't like that they became your president, I think is wildly dangerous, because I'm wondering now, is this going to be the new thing? Is, like, the new thing going to be president wins office, opposition party takes the House and endlessly investigates him and drags his name through the mud and every friend that he has ever made through the mud until they get power, just so the opposition party can complain about it and do the exact same thing? I mean, my understanding of the Constitution was that it pulled us out of that vicious cycle of revolution, tyranny, chaos, revolution, tyranny, chaos, and it seems that we're trapped in. So more specifically, I'd like to know, why do you think that this is a big fat nothing burger? I mean, I'm looking at it, and I'll just tell you really fast my analysis. I was amazed that Hillary Clinton, I give her props, she sat there for 12 hours? And if if an entire council of lawyers, which is basically what our congressmen are now, if an entire council of lawyers can grill a Secretary of State and not come up with something indictable within 8 hours, I'm sorry. At that point, you just need to turn off the microphones, cut bait, and leave. There's nothing there. I'm sorry. And to a certain extent, I look at this Mueller investigation. I think, dude, if it's been now over a year. We all know from forensic science that the vast majority of cases are closed with evidence gleaned in the first 24 hours. So if we're not, closing this case or finding any smoking guns, I just think it's in all of our best interest to move on.
My big takeaway for where this goes is legally is almost irrelevant. You can get into whatever technicality you want. I mean, how much have we shifted from Russia collusion to obstruction of justice to he's unfit, to he's tampering, to he committed perjury? I mean, the standard on what they think he's done or why they want to get him has shifted so far that I'm really not, comfortable saying they're not going to just throw out the most random, loosely connected, poor legal charge that you could make. I wouldn't put that past anybody. I think that's everybody's clear stated goal. If you look at what the Manhattan DA was saying the other day, literally threatening to go after the Trump family and friends purely for being connected to him to find crimes, to go to my point earlier. So the bigger picture, it really doesn't matter what they dig up because I think the general American public is already set in their view. They either generally think what you do, which is, wow, they've been going after this guy forever and they can't find anything, and clearly this is just something because they don't like him, or they don't like the president and they think he committed a crime by getting elected, and they've already thought that, and, that's nothing's going to change their mind. So I think that's the case with a lot of the stuff with President Trump, where a lot of it's more baked in. So whatever comes out, I just think it's going to be less relevant maybe politically than people hope, even potentially, depending on how egregious it is, could give the president a boost. If you look at what happened with Bill Clinton, although I was young at the time, as I understand it, people didn't really like what they put him through. And, hindsight, as I reflect on it and look back on it, I say that probably wasn't maybe the best standard to set in terms of democracy. And I also think it's ironic, I wanted to make this point, Cardon, you have a lot of people that scream about democracy and dictators and how we're running the country and accusations thrown around about Trump. And I think when you have a deliberate effort to overthrow a democratically elected president from the day he was elected office on whatever guise you could possibly find, that is the most anti-democratic agenda possibly ever. And I think the irony escapes a lot of people there.
The irony escapes them. So I look at this, and this is the only reason why I really think nothing's going to happen from this. And I know there's a lot of calls to, protect Mueller, as though he's under some kind of attack. And I got to tell you, Mueller is the most protected person on Earth, and that investigation is the most protected investigation on Earth. And I got to say, I'm kind of growing tired on both sides of people saying, we will not be silenced. I mean, nothing is more intellectually dishonest than somebody on national television with a microphone strapped to their chest saying, we will not be silenced. And if the Mueller probe were to go away, I mean, at this point, I think what happened in Baltimore would just happen nationwide. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, nobody's silencing this cat. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of conviction by hearsay, which I worry about because I feel like it's eroding a general sentiment of due process. And am I correct in this? Am I off kilter?
I think you saw it with the Kavanaugh hearings, and again, this is why I think everything is being tried to be made legal right now, and I still think it's political. And I think that's how it always will be. And I think the more you try to focus on the legal issue side of it, the more you're losing the political side. And kind of that's where Democrats have gone with it. And I think it's not going to help their political end argument. Let's say they came up with something legitimate in the end. Well, certainly not a lot of people are going to take it that way, even if they were to at this point.
Okay, so where do you think it's going to go? I mean, I read the NPR article. I saw, infamously the Project Veritas video where Van Jones himself said, it's a big fat nothing burger. What do you think is going to happen with it? I mean, you're the only guy that called Donald Trump as flipping Michigan, so I trust what you're going to say here. Where do you think it's going to go?
I think the president stands in very good chance to win re-election based on his record of performance as a president. I think there's a lot of folks that held their nose to President Trump, maybe that were more, some of the more conservative-leaning folks, some of the Romney camp, some of the traditional conservative folks that, were kind of taken aback by Trump. I think there's going to be a lot more of those people that come over that maybe held their nose in 2016. I think that's going to help Trump a lot. And then I truly just at this time do not see a Democratic candidate that could, withstand the beating that they're most sure to take when they get up there with him. So until one of those things changes, I don't think anything in the Mueller situation could change my prediction there.
Okay, well, you just totally segued into the last question I was going to ask you. Obviously, I don't know what'd you say?
The economy. It's the economy. It's the performance of our country. It's how we're doing nationally. They can scream and make all this noise on CNN every day and tell you it's the end of the world every day, and that each little thing that's done is going to, just cause the worst damage ever. But people in general are pretty smart. That was probably my biggest takeaway from the 2016 campaign, was it really gave me reassurance in just your general American person. I mean, to think about the ability to have everybody telling you, whether it's major media, major donors, your party, the other parties, national interests, other countries, everybody saying, don't vote Trump. He's the worst guy ever. He's this, he's that, he's that. And enough people were able to come to an independent decision on their own that was, not in their best interest to listen to everybody else and to support, the president for the reasons that they did. So I generally hold that faith that that's how people will behave in 2020. And that's why I think it comes down to, the fact that he's kind of backed up everything he said, more so than a lot of presidents could ever say, even if you disagree with what he's done. He's been what he said he was going to do.
All right, so I'm going to have to take a quick commercial break here, but if you don't mind, I'd love it if you could stay on to the other side of the break, because you have segued totally into another question that I had for you about actual re-election years. I'm one of those geeks that loves the numbers. If there were not horse racing, but if they're like political horse racing in Las Vegas that you could bet on, I would totally go there and bet on it. And I'm really curious, his re-election, in my mind, I mean, you say you have a great amount of faith in the American people from 2016. Well, you're also talking to a guy that just saw the orange curtain fall and his entire district get completely decimated by a party that is going after, massive tax increases, getting rid of Prop 13, and a lot of things that will directly affect us here. So just hang on for a second. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back. This is Problem Solver Politics.
Frontier Toyota has teamed up with Santa Clarita Sheriffs for this year's holiday toy drive. Spread joy to a child, bringing a new toy to Frontier Toyota on Valencia Boulevard and Creekside. Test drive Frontier Toyota's most enticing new models, including the exciting 2019 Camry. Frontier Toyota, no games, just great deals. Like the world's best-selling Tacoma truck, or test drive the 2019 Corolla. The Santa Clarita Sheriff Toy Drive and Frontier Toyota, a tradition of giving back to Santa Clarita.
Hey, it's Aaron Delatorre checking in with today's weather forecast. Mix of sun and clouds all day long with daytime temps hovering in the mid-70s. We'll see overnight lows tonight drop down to the mid-40s. For anything and everything going on around the Santa Clarita Valley, go to hometownstation.com. Check us out across all of our social media feeds at KHTS Radio and sign up for our daily newsletter going out each weekday and a special weekend edition on Sunday. You can find that on hometownstation.com.
98.1 FM and AM 1220. Now FM 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Your hometown station.
All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. We are live in the KHTS studio. I am your host, Cardon Ellis, and we are here with Killer Cody Como.
Howdy, howdy. How y'all doing?
We also got on the line Tim Lindenberg, who works for Venture Strategic, who was one of the only guys who predicted correctly the victory of Donald Trump in 2016 and actually worked on his infamously successful flip of Michigan back then. And we're going to talk a little bit, Tim, about Donald Trump's reelection. And I'm going to preamble a couple of questions I have for you here with this statement. I actually kind of lament our incessant demand or perception that unless you're a two-term president, you're successful. If George H.W. Bush taught us anything, I think it's that you can be an extremely successful and dignified president that serves only one term. To a certain extent, I wish we had lots of one-term presidents and only a couple of wildly successful two-term presidents. But now if you're one-term president, it's kind of perceived as like, oh, you lost. But really, I think only to them and maybe some of the political class. The rest of us, I believe, look at people like George H.W. Bush and say, what an amazing president. And we don't even think about whether or not he was, quote, voted out or not, because we just see a wildly successful president. So anyway, we're incessantly worried about the next election. And even though it's 2 years away, we already are speculating, mostly because of the big speculation on who's going to be a Democratic opponent. But you correctly called the 2016 election, and I believe what Bill Clinton said in his campaign about it's the economy, stupid, is 100% spot on. So you think that he will get reelected? I've seen a lot of Trump hatred hurt Republicans in California in our little mini blue wave that we have here. I know the blue wave didn't hit nationally, but if you think Donald Trump's going to get reelected, I'd love to see your analysis why and specific details why you think he would indeed get reelected.
Sure. Well, let me just start with kind of the premise of your question, which is that you saw a mini blue wave in California. Now, I agree there was a mini blue wave in many places, or you can call it a blue wave. I don't need to agree or disagree on the semantics there with Democrats who might want to argue.
Well, in Orange County was a tsunami. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah.
So here's where I'm going with that. I want to talk specifically about places like Orange County and California. I think it's very easy for Republicans in the party to use the president as a scapegoat because they're afraid to campaign with him or on the issues he campaigns on, even though they agree with him, because they don't like the way he says it. And I think that's a big problem with the party, right? That's why you've got Trump. And so what you have is a situation. So you had people that didn't embrace Trump, and I'm not saying that's why they won or lost, but I'm saying it wasn't because of Trump that people voted 4 out of 4, sitting congressmen that had been congressmen since I was born in Orange County. It was an all-red county. That didn't happen because people all of a sudden decided to hate Trump. Okay, we were watching the numbers, Cardon, come in, and full disclosure as well, we were not working on the congressionals there, so I will not take blame for those losses. But we were watching the numbers come in, and you look, and Republicans are winning in early turn-ins, right? We're winning the absentee turn-ins. You look at the election day, we're winning. Then you look 3 weeks after election, and all of a sudden, 3 of the 4 seats change. Why is that? It's called ballot harvesting. I would encourage you to do you could do a whole.
Oh yeah, we did a whole show on ballot harvesting and why I think Republicans are stupid for not having done it.
Yes. Okay. So that's my point. They'd rather blame Trump as they distance themselves entirely from his agenda, even though they agree with it, than take ownerships over failed strategy. I mean, we were losers before Trump, and we could be losers after Trump. And I guess that's kind of where I approach it. Everybody is so Trump-oriented, and I'm like, well, Trump's great. I think he's doing a great job, and I'm very happy with him. I'm fortunate to have been a part of it. But I'm kind of thinking bigger picture, and I think we're just very much leaning on that justification for everything instead of looking at the bigger picture strategies and what Democrats are doing to change laws in different states. They're doing different things in Michigan. They'll be trying to do ballot harvesting laws in many other states. And it's like, what are you going to do to counteract that and to beat that system?
Now, this is interesting.
Versus, hey, let's run from the president because he sounds mean sometimes on issues we agree with.
Okay.
I don't buy it.
I
think if the president would have come to Orange County, I think we could have saved a seat or two, but they wouldn't have had it.
Okay. Oh, I mean, I agree with you. Now, it's something stuck on my mind. You said we were losers before Trump, and I think we'll be losers after Trump. What do you think we're doing that's losing?
What? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, when you say we, I assume you're talking about the Republican Party, right? So when you said we were losers before Trump and we're losers after Trump, well, if we're talking in the we form, what do you think that we is doing? What do you think the Republicans are doing that make them losers before and after Trump? Doing or not doing?
Well, to allude to my point there about, folks that, very easily want to blame him for their loss, I think Republicans have always had problems taking ownership over their ideas and backing them up because they're too easily put into a box and made out to be people they're not. We heard all the things that we heard about Trump, about McCain in 2008, and then about Romney in 2012. People forget that Romney was made out to be a worse person than, President Trump morally and elsewise. And my point to Republicans is, good luck with the nice guy thing. And when you get mad at the president when he hits his opponent's back, rightfully so, that's just kind of a losing attitude in politics, the way I view it.
Okay, so I think Donald Trump could win re-election because he's just good at, quote, winning, and it would be a personal, a personality and his personal ability to win. But I'm curious, what do you think Republicans have to do to actually start winning some of the elections?
I think we have a big problem with the party, and I think they need to start doing the things that they campaign on. I mean, look at Obamacare. What a disaster. They all campaign on it and tell you they're going to do something, and they don't. And for everybody that looks at that, this is why you have kind of a separation with your more establishment folks and your Trump folks, right? And there's always been that separation. That was the Tea Party before that with your activist side, because you had all these people that were telling them they were going to do stuff, and then they get into office and you realize everybody acts the same. The big Republicans and the big Democrats are the same. It was part of the environment that bred for Trump, right? And I think falling into that trap again and not feeling like you can defend your views or the things that you're advocating for without being called something negative and not understanding how to have that argument in an articulate way is, Republicans get scared off. And that's, I think, the big difference. That's what Trump did that was different. And I hope it doesn't go back to that way, but that's kind of the general nature of the party. That's why people continue to criticize Trump. I always find it funny when they're like, some congressman or senator criticizes Trump and it's a news story. I'm like, when were they ever with him during the campaign? I mean, there's some, but as a large part, there's always been this little separation here, and that's really the reason why, because Trump does what he says and most politicians don't.
Okay, so really quick, in 30 seconds, like 25 seconds, why do you think he will and or can win re-election?
Best answer, I will go with the Rust Belt states where I campaign in. I think it will come down to those again. I think the electoral map has shifted, and I don't think anybody can campaign in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, and places like that in the way that Trump can. I think those will end up deciding the election the way the map shifts.
Okay, and if Kasich runs and takes Ohio and takes one of those Rust Belt states, do you think he can still
People
pull
in
it off?
People in Ohio do not like John Kasich. He will not win Ohio. He could not beat Trump in Ohio.
Well, didn't he win his own state in 2016?
He may have, but that was before the president was elected and started carrying out his agenda. I do not think he is as popular as he was then as he is now, especially after his behavior since 2016.
All right. Awesome. Well, unfortunately, Tim, I would love to sit and talk with you for hours, but we're coming up on a hard out here in a second. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've been talking with Tim Lindenberger of what once upon a time was the Michigan Trump campaign. He was one of the only guys that correctly called that Trump was going to win. So we value. Thanks for coming on the show, Tim. Everybody, this is Problem Solver Politics. It is